Let me ask you a question, Mr. Crosby. Is he
Yeah.
older than you, Mr. Hope?
A couple months difference, and he's the older.
He is the older.
And but God, I wished I had his drive.
Or his money.
He's always money. He's got more money than anybody in Howard Hughes, I think. He's loaded, and he just never gives up.
How's your lovely family?
Just fine, Jack.
Boy, you've got a house full, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it's time to get their friends in here. It's quite a little group.
Can I call you Bing? Would you mind if I called you Bing?
I wouldn't answer to anything else.
I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Well, I heard you so much, I feel the same way.
You know, I've just, it's corny and to say I've been a fan all my life, and that's kind of a dumb thing, but I really have, and I've really admired you so much, not only for your life as a performer, but for your personal life and everything. You've done so much for charity, you've done so much for people, and you've done so much for us, as speaking as the public, to entertain us and one thing and another. I'm just very thrilled to talk to you.
Well, of course, my personal life, if studied in depth, wouldn't be quite that idealistic.
Oh, I don't think
close look.
I don't think you're that bad.
No.
I talked to Hope the other day, by the way. He said that in the road movies that you did together, that he had to give you the girl every time.
Had to. It was the only alternative.
He said it was the only thing that kept you going.
How incongruous would it be for him to wind up with a girl?
Aside from Hollywood palaces and one thing and another, what are you doing these days?
Oh, I had a rather busy year, Jack. I did Danny Thomas, Andy Williams, Dean Martin, Jackie Gleason, Ed Sullivan, The Hope, the golf telecast, the palaces. Between one thing and another, it was, I think, more appearances than I've made in several years.
Of course, I'm most concerned with the record industry, and I just wonder why you haven't had a hit record lately.
Well, because I don't sing as good anymore as I used to, and because there's too much competition. These young kids are pretty good. I just did an album, incidentally, in the East for Pickwick of some lively songs with a semi-rock background, things like Up, Up, and Away, and Love is Blue, and Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. I can't think of all the titles. My Friend the Doctor and Talk to the Animals, and a new thing from France called Journey's End that sounded very promising.
You don't feel out of touch with the music business today, do you?
Hell no. I listen to the radio all the time, and I think I'm au courant.
You're what?
Au courant. Current. Yeah, I think I'm up a little. I like the new music. I think it's very stimulating, very exciting when it's done well, with good musicianship. And some of them do have very good musicianship. The Association and the Fifth Dimension, just to name a couple.
You did an album a few years ago with Buddy Bregman.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the best things ever recorded.
He had some kind of arrangements, didn't he?
Oh, he was just great. And so were you.
I did a little film with Buddy in England last summer for Irish television, some Irish songs. It may be on here St. Patrick's Day, I don't know. Buddy is now a producer and a director of TV in Britain.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he produced this thing and directed it, and it's a cute little thing with all Irish cast, the popular people of Ireland in the musical field.
You're Irish by descent, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. I go there 2 or 3 times a year.
Do you like it?
It's a great country, one of the greatest. The people are so kind and so amusing, and a great sense of humor, and they like golf, horse racing, literature, the theater, and booze, in that order.
You didn't mention how pretty those Irish girls are.
Oh, they're lovely.
Oh, boy.
I won a race over there a couple of years ago, the Irish Derby, with a horse I was interested in, and I had to go up in the steward's stand to receive the cup, and a great crowd gathered. I guess it must have been 30,000, 40,000 of them. And I was making a little speech, and they kept hollering, sing a song, sing a song. So I sang Irish Eyes Are Smiling, and the little fellow deep in the crowd kept hollering, I can't see you, Bing, I can't see you. So I finally stopped singing. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, would you ever stand on your wallet? That'll give you an idea how quick they are.
Oh, that's marvelous.
And, of course, the golf courses over there are so beautiful and so lush, and there's so many, such a great interest in the game. And
Is John Ford living there now? He has quite a lovely home there.
Who?
Is it John Ford?
No, John Huston.
John Huston.
Oh, yeah, I visited him. He's over in Galway.
Yeah.
And he makes it a permanent home. He took an old castle and he did a sensational job of remodeling it and furnishing it. It's probably one of the most beautiful interiors I've ever seen in my life.
Uh-huh.
And he rides the hound, you know. He's in the Galway Hunt.
Oh, really? In the dress and the whole?
Oh, the red coat and the black hat, and he's master of the hounds.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
He may break his can, too, one day. If he's not careful. He's a little old for that kind. Going over those big brick fences they have there.
Let me ask you a question. Now, you had your choice of, well, anywhere in the world to settle down, and you selected the Bay Area. You're down the peninsula. What was the reason for that?
A variety of reasons, Jack. I've been coming. Of course, the best recommendation for any place is the people and the friends you have. And I've been coming here for so many years, for so long, that I had just as many friends here as I had in Hollywood. And the weather is more stimulating. Lots of great golf here. The mountains are close by. The sea, of course. The fishing, the shooting, the cultural aspects of San Francisco, the theater, the opera, the symphony. It's just a great, great city. I think if you had to name one city in the United States that had the most individual kind of a character, you'd have to pick San Francisco. You know, Cleveland looks like Toledo. They both look like Columbus. All cities look alike, except San Francisco, New Orleans, New York, and Boston. They have character.
Of course, I never see your name in the paper going here, going there. Do you ever get out? Do you ever go to Ernie's, the Blue Fox, that kind of thing?
I go to Vic's most of the time. I maybe once or twice a week, or down to Senior Pico down there on the old Ghirardelli Square, and then I go to Ernie's occasionally, and then Johnny Cann's when we want to change the diet. We dine out, maybe average once a week, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wondered what your favorite restaurants were around the city. Trader Vic's?
I know Vic. He's a friend of mine. I know the staff. And you get accustomed to going in a place, and they get to know you, know what you want, where you like to sit. So it solves a lot of problems to just go to the same place a lot.
Uh-huh. And
God knows the cuisine around there is exceptional.
Oh, yes. What about golf? Do you play a lot of golf?
Yeah, both the Burlingame and San Francisco Club.
Mm-hmm. What do you shoot, truthfully?
Oh, if I've been playing regularly, I can get in the mid-70s.
Is that good enough to beat Hope?
Oh, yeah, I can handle him. Hell, yes. The only thing he can do is out-dicker you on the first tee. He's a great manager, but he just doesn't, he's not enough of an athlete. But he makes such a tough deal on the first tee that if he just stay on his feet, he'll get the money. You know, he gets you out in the first tee, and the crowd gathers, and he starts a monologue, carping and upbraiding you and railing at you until finally, just to get off there and get out away from the crowd, you say, okay, you got a deal, and then you've already committed yourself to something you couldn't possibly discharge.
You know you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, the music business has been awfully good to you. You've worked with some of the...
Has it ever?
Some of the greatest people in the business, some of the most exciting people in the world that all of us wish we had known. And I think back to the old Kraft Music Hall and some of the people you had on.
I was in to see Segovia the other day, and it reminded me again of the Kraft Music Hall, because we had him on a couple of times. We had everybody in those days that from the classic music field, we get on, from the popular, all the Met people and the singers and all the prominent concert artists, some great characters. I even had Shally Appin on, the Russian basso, and he was a great, great man, a great figure, and in his field, preeminent, I guess.
Mm-hmm. If you joined us late, by the way, I'm talking to Bing Crosby on the telephone. What about Jolson? You worked with Jolson, and he took the Kraft Music Hall when you left it, and it went back to the East Coast and so on. What kind of a man was he?
Jolson was a great fellow to be around, great sense of humor, dynamic personality, an electric performer. I don't think I can recall anybody and all the people I've seen work that could create an electricity in an audience like this guy could. To give you an idea, when his appearance on the Kraft Music Hall, he hadn't been doing much for a couple of years. A new generation had come up, and we worked in front of an audience, and these were teenagers and kids that didn't know just exactly who the hell Jolson was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some qualms, you know. I was dubious about just how he would be received with that kind of delivery he had. And he came out, and I introduced him, and there was a smattering of applause. Some people knew him of old, and some didn't. And the orchestra started to vamp, and he went into Toot Toot Tootsie Goodbye with the movements he had and the electricity he generated. When he finished, the roof came in. You never heard anything like it in your life.
And the audience didn't, a lot of them didn't even remember who Jolson was.
No. If they did, they really didn't connect with him too closely.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them had never seen him in person anyhow. They'd seen the film Larry Parks did, and Parks did a marvelous job. It was Jolson's voice, I believe, and Parks was photographed. But when this guy stepped on the stage and started to move, it was look out, Jack, here it comes, you know.
He was that great.
Marvelous, unbelievable. And I saw him many times at the old Winter Garden in New York on the Sunday nights they used to have there. And he'd get on that runway, and he might do an hour and a half, you know, or 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody left the theater.
Would he go down?
He just kept saying, you ain't heard nothing yet, and here he'd come with another bomb, another smasher.
Mm-hmm. Would he go down in your book as probably one of the greatest entertainers?
The greatest musical entertainer of all time.
Is that right?
Yeah, I've seen better comedians, better people in other fields, instrumentalists, groups, but I've never seen a single performer musically who could accomplish what this man could accomplish.
What about Paul Whiteman, who passed away just a few months ago? Now, you got your first start. You got your start with Paul Whiteman.
Well, that was probably the most valuable association that I ever got into, because Paul was not only a great conductor and took jazz and out of saloons and put it in the fancy joints and in the concert halls, but he raised the standard of pay among musicians, raised the quality of musicians. He reached out and got every good man he could find, and if a new one come along, he got him too.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity of being with him 3 years, working with these kind of musicians, these kind of arrangers, was something that really you just couldn't replace.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have an inkling when you were young, when you were getting started, about the tremendous things that were waiting for you, the tremendous success, when you were with the Rhythm Boys?
Oh, no, of course not. I was just having a great time and doing what I like to do, and had no possible idea that I would ever amount to anything except be just another singer knocking around. But it was such fun being with people like the Dorseys and Venuti and Lang and Bud Freeman and, I could name Pee Wee Russell and guys like that, Eddie Condon and Henry Bussey and Ferdy Grofet and Chet Haslett and the name is, the list is 100 yards long. I was just in seventh heaven, hog heaven, just being around those kind of guys. I didn't think it was going to lead anywhere.
Uh-huh. Did you ever meet the young singer who some critics say, if he had lived, would have rivaled Bing Crosby for fame and fortune and so on, Russ Columbo, who was killed in the early 1930s with a freak accident? Did you ever meet him? Did you know him?
He was one of my dearest friends.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We worked together in the Coconut Grove with Gus Arnheim.
Uh-huh.
And he was dating Carol Lombard at the time of his death, and she was, of course, a great friend of mine. And Russ, I just was a great buddy of his. He was a violinist to begin with, in the orchestra, and also sang. The band was full of singers. There was the Rhythm Boys, and Russ soloed, and I soloed, and we had a couple of gals, and it was a performing unit. And Russ was a delightful fellow with great charm, very sensitive sort of a guy, handsome boy, wonderful looking fella. And to begin with, a good musician, and following that, a fine singer.
Well, what do you suppose would have happened to his career had he lived?
Oh, he'd gone a long way. This guy would have, because he could act, and he photographed beautifully. He had wonderful personal appeal. There's just no limit to where he might have gone.
He was a great talent. Even today, his records have some sort of I don't know what it is, but you listen to Russ Columbo singing, and there's something there.
Yeah, he was marvelous. Everybody liked him. He had a wide circle of friends.
Did you feel that you had something new when you started singing, a new style, a new approach to things?
No, not at all.
Although you were heralded as the first of the crooners, really.
No, it was Valley and Will Osborne, and there was quite a few of them around in those days. I was just another one of the boys. That's all I knew.
Do you think movies made the big difference?
I think movies and the radio. The big thing was being a year and a half in the Coconut Grove with that 2 hours a night up and down the whole Pacific coast, both with the band, and then we used to go up upstairs and do about an hour at the piano fooling around. And that was great exposure. And that's where Barris wrote, Wrap Your Troubles in Dreams and I Surrender, and I don't remember how many others.
Oh, sure.
And those records called Bill Paley, he became aware of me and sent for me, and I went on CBS, and from there on it kept rolling.
I talked to Jack Benny one day, and I asked him if radio was better than television, and he was very irate. He didn't want to look back. He said you have to look forward, and television is the new medium, and one thing and another.
Yeah.
But from your point of view, was radio more fun? Was it more fun to work than television?
It was a great deal easier because you didn't have to make up, and you didn't have to worry about cameras and blocking and all the rehearsals. And radio had something that television doesn't have. I mean, audiences could listen to certain programs, certain personalities, dramatic programs, musical programs, and could paint a picture in their minds of what this fellow looked like, what kind of a man he was, and around that image they could build up, a following.
Mm-hmm.
Sound effects were so important in dramatic shows, and something's missing. There's no question. Although radio is just as big as it ever was, but
in a different
doesn't have
way.
those programs.
And
have those artists anymore because they're all on TV, except with the medium of records, which you guys do such a wonderful job with.
Well, Bing, let me ask you.
Only one thing you don't do,
All right.
I've never noticed you being particularly derelict in this respect, but lots of times the disc jockeys play marvelous records, and never mention the artist.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a matter of time, probably, and you got your hands full with commercials you have to do, but I've heard some of them, go on for 5 or 6 numbers and throw commercials in there, and never at any time mention who the singer was or who the band was. And, the guy worked pretty hard on that. He's got a hit. It'd be nice to say that's Charlie Quelafretz. I just knocked that off.
Oh, sure. They need it. They need the help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice little gesture.
Yeah. If you had it all to do over again, would you do anything differently?
Not a thing. I can't think of anything.
Yeah. I don't mean to group you with Francis X. Bushman, but he said the same thing. I had the last radio interview before he passed away, and he was such a great man. And he said to me, he said, if I had it all to do over again, I'd do it just the same, but he said I'd spend it a little bit faster.
Well, I imagine I'd do exactly the same. I don't know what the hell I'd do any different.
Well, Bing, it's been so nice talking to you, and I'm so grateful for the time. And
it was a pleasure, Jack. I enjoyed talking with you, and I've been wanting to call you, but I've been away a great deal, and just had a little free time. I thought I'd give you a buzz.
Oh, I'm very grateful, and it's been a very exciting afternoon for me now.
Thank you, Jack, and my best to all your listeners.
Absolutely, and thank you.
Okay, Jack.
Right, bye-bye.